All right, welcome everybody. This is the Denver user group. Today we're focusing on multi-factor authentication. I'm going to present my screen here, or Marcel is going to present. Here, let me take over. Do I Alt tab? Do I have tab here? I'll share first, Marcel, then I'll kick it over to you. This one. But yeah, welcome everybody. We've got like 28 people joining. This is the Denver user group. We're focusing on multi-factor authentication in OutSystems. My name is Tim Pender. I'm a senior consultant front-end developer for T4S Partners and your current host MC today. We're going to have Marcelo Ferreira, who's the head of OutSystems and a solution architect at Near Partner, and an OutSystems MVP, walking us through kind of like a brief introduction about multi-factor authentication, why it's important, and its use case. And then he's going to go ahead and do a live demo. So here's a brief recap of the agenda. We're just going to do an introduction. We're going to give Marcelo's presentation and demo. I'll facilitate some questions and answers. If you guys can mute in the background. Thank you, appreciate that. We'll handle question and answer after that. Then we're going to do a fun little quiz at the end to give away some OutSystems swag. It'll be at kahoot.it. You can join from your phone with this pin. I'll bring this pin back up a little bit later. So with all that being said, I'm going to kick it over to you, Marcelo. I think you're muted.
Okay.
You're good. You're good
okay. Now. So can you see my screen with my face and the title, Building Secure MFA?
Yes. Yeah, we're good to go.
Yeah, good. So as Tim said, I'm Marcel Ferreira. I'm head of OutSystems. I have more than 10 years of experience and also an MVP. Currently, I'm the head of OutSystems at Near Partner. And basically, my job is to create and support our team here at Near Partner. And I would like to start this with a thought or some feeling that I've been having, and to be honest, all our clients. So in my mind, every time I go into technical forums and stuff like that, more and more I see news about attacks that were made and companies that had to stop because they were hacked somehow. So, and since this is a rising problem, looks like in our clients, this security subject is something that comes along a lot more times than before, and especially in the areas that we work, like banking and government. Also health has a lot of security concerns. So I think this is a subject that more and more has been raised by our clients, and I'm sure that your clients have the same concerns. So I thought to bring you a subject that takes care of security, and I think is something that everyone will use on their projects. And the subject is how build a secure multi-factor authentication in OutSystems. So what is multi-factor authentication? As the name said, is having multiple ways of authentication a person. So for a person to tell the system, I am this user. So on this image, we can see 3 different steps of multi-factor authentication. We start by the first step, I think is the most used and most common, and is the username and the password. Then we have the step 1 is where you get a PIN on your phone or email or something else, and you need to give that PIN that you got into the system. And you have a step 3 that is biometrics, in this case of fingerprint, that you can use to say, I'm this user. So multi-factor authentication is when you use more than 2 at least. So you'll say 2-factor authentication. When you use at least 2 of these factors, you are already using multi-factor authentication. Basically, you ask multiple ways of the user to say, I'm this person. And from this image, we already can see there are multiple types of MFA. I just wanted to list the types of authentications. And the first one is things you know. So this is the basic one. So it's like a user and password, secret questions. So everything that is something that you can keep in your mind and you know it to identify your own person. Things you have. So this is if you have access to stuff. So like a phone, an email. I don't know there in the United States, but before here we also have a card with coordinates. And if we use the right coordinate, would give us access to our banking systems. So that was also already a start of having this MFA of possession. So things you are is everything related with biometrics. So things that you, so fingertips, your eyes, voice, whatever. So these are things that you are and are to reproduce. And basically these are the common ones. So there are others. For example, you could also use location. So you could, for example, only let the user access your application if he is in a specific location in the world, on a specific domain or IP and stuff like that. So why MFA is important? So this was took from a study that Microsoft did. And the biggest reason why MFA is important is because of all the problems that passwords bring to the lack of security. So users use poor passwords and use the same password in all the systems. And I think here the data that is really critical is that you can see that 81% of the breaches are because of credential theft. So because the attacker somehow by brute force, phishing or whatever, found the password of the user, and because these systems didn't have multi-factor authentication, those systems were breached. And this was also on the study, and it says that if a system has multi-factor authentication, it can block 99.9% of the attacks done on that system. So I think with these numbers, we can see how important it is to implement a solution like this on our applications. So how does MFA work? So as we have been talking, MFA is having multiple steps of authentication. So we just need to create as much steps that we can to make sure that for the authentication of the person. security-wise, this will always be a trade-off. So if you want more security, you will have more complexity and less performance, and also a worse user experience. For example, if I have a system that I really need him to be really, really secure, let's say that I put the 3 forms of, so I put a password, a mobile authenticator, and a fingerprint to access a system. If I keep putting too many steps for a person to access the system, that person will start being bothered by that. So it's always a trade-off, and we need to find the equilibrium from how much my data needs to be secure to the rest of the complexity, performance, user experience. So, but MFA, multiple ways of authentication. Then here I specify how one of those specific authentication works, and is the one that is the possession one. So how the authenticators on your, so if you configure an authenticator application on your cell phone, or if you receive a code on your email, how those codes work. So they use an algorithm called time-based one-time password. Okay, normally there is multiple types of OTPs. There are TOTP, that is time-based OTPs, one-time passwords, and there is also hash OTP, hash one-time passwords. But mostly all of them work like this. So in the beginning, when you configure this authentication method on your system, you need to create a seed. And then that seed, that is like a secret, you can generate those numbers, so that you normally receive on the authentication applications or on email. You can create those numbers based on this seed. And that way, so basically in the beginning, when I configure, I have the seed, I save the seed on the database of my system, I share that seed with the user. That user, for example, used that seed on those applications of authentication. And then that application can generate codes. When the user uses that codes on my application, I validate that that code was generated by that specific seed. I know this can be a bit strange, but then during the live demo, I will show you how all this works. So we are already on the time of the demo. So I will start by showing you a simple demo that I did. Not today, but in the next days, I will also put this application on the Forge, so everyone that wants to see and play a bit with this on your own, you will be able to. So I created here a simple thing just to create the user. This password. Okay. Okay. I wasn't writing the password correctly. So because this user doesn't have any multi-factor authentication configured yet, when it logged in, it came directly into this application. But basically, the only thing that you can do on this application is configure an MFA method. So let's start by configure an MFA method. I will start by the email. I will put here my email. So on the background, what this will do is basically this. So I'm adding this email. So I'm creating the seed and creating the code on the background. And I have my email here, and I should be receiving that code. Give me a second. Okay. So I received the code. Okay. So it came from my Gmail, and I have a code. Oh, by the way, let's put any other code. So as you can see, it's not valid because I already have a seed, and I'm already validating this code with that seed. So if I put here the code that I received for my application, everything will go well and the configuration will be active. Every time that you are configure a multi-factor authentication, it's important to have this step of validation to try to understand that in this case, I wanted to make sure that the user that is configuring that email as a multi-factor authentication has access to that email. So, and I did that by making him put the code that I just sent him to the email. Let's configure the other one, the application one. So this one I will not be able to show you because I could share the screen of my cell phone, but these applications that make offer an authenticator have a protection that you cannot share them. So how these authentication applications work? There are two ways of adding MFA to the application. And basically this is to insert on those applications the seed. It's through a QR code. And basically this QR code represents the seed and or this seed or setup key, okay? So basically what I am going to do is I'm going to use Google Authenticator. I will scan the QR code, okay? And by the way, the QR code works most of the times, but if it doesn't, you can just manually put the setup key on those applications. So right now, I already have my Google Authenticator generating the keys all the time. So just for my application to confirm with the user that the user did everything correctly, I will ask him a code. If I put any other code, I will have a code invalid. But if I put the code that my application is giving me, I just configured the application as another factor of authentication. So right now I'm going to log in. And now when I logged in again, since I already have multi-factor authentication methods configured, I will ask for it. So this looks almost like the other lists, but I didn't have the time to do this better. But as you can see, the user is still not logged in. So we are still in a step before the user being logged in into application. So basically, if this application had any other screen, if you go directly into that screen, you will not be able to access that screen if you had the register role, for example, there. So basically, this screen is for me to decide which method I want to use to access to identify myself as this person. So I will choose application for now. So I could put any code there and it will say invalid code. But if I put the code of my application, just give me a second because the one here is already expiring. So, and the new code is this one. See, now I was logged in and I have access to my application. This application just do the configuration. And for email would be exactly the same thing. So I will choose email. On the background, I will create a code and I will send that code to the email that the user configure. So I already received that code. And if I put that code here, I would be logged in into the application. So this is the demo that I prepare for you. But since I was told that most of you guys were developers, and I think normally developers like to look into the code, I will deep dive a bit into it. I just need to move it here into the correct screen. So this is the small application that I just show you guys. So I will start by the screen where you can configure the authentication methods. Okay. So the screen is this one. So I have a pop-up to choose the method that I want. And then I have the other pop-up. And basically this pop-up just has two web blocks inside it in case I chose email or in case I chose the application. So let's see if I chose the email for now. So it's just a wizard here. I ask for the email. When the user inserts the email, what I do is open. So I generate a random key. Okay. Oh, by the way, I use these two extensions. One, basically they use both code from GitHub, and we implemented those codes on an extension. And basically these extensions generates and validates OTP, TOTP, and hash OTP codes. Okay. So, and also generate seeds. So if the user adds an email that he wants to configure, what I do is I generate a seed. I give a random number. By the way, this is not mandatory, but is another step of security. And this is one that doesn't put that much complexity, so it's nice to do. And here, with the seed and the random number, here you, for this algorithm, I need to choose the hash mode and the size of the code. And basically, this generates a hash OTP. Okay. Basically, what I do is so I have a table here with all the multi-factor authentications for this user. And what I do is, so I have a new one for this user of type email. I have a status created. So basically, first I save it as created. And when the user tells me the code that he saw in the application or the email, I change this to configure or something. I don't remember what was the name that I gave. It was active. So after confirmation, I change this to active. And I save the email of the person, the key, and the random value of the item. So I pick up the code that I just created and I send to the user. After this, when I send the code to the user, I go into the next step of the wizard, and I will be waiting for the user to give me the code that he received on email. When it does that, what I do on the server side is I check the MFA is configuring, everything is okay, and then I pick up the code and use this action validate OTP. So basically the validation is always over a specific seed with a code that the user just sent me. I need to say the hash mode and the size and give the counter that I saved on the database. If everything is correct, I will change this to active, basically. And this will become active multi-factor authentication of my application. So for the application, it's a bit different, but not that different. So when the pop-up opens, the first thing I do is I create right away the seed. Okay, I generate the seed, I save it here. Okay, here I don't need the counter or the email, and I generate a QR code based on that seed, and that with the QR code and the seed created, I show both on the screen. Okay, I give the user can use his time to insert this on the application, the Google Authenticator or the Microsoft Authenticator. So any authenticator, they all basically use the same type of algorithms. When it's done, it goes into validation, and the validation is just going to this step and give me the code that you are seeing on or in your application. On this step is basically the same as the email. The only difference is while on the email, I'm validating OTP. The authenticator apps use TOTP. So I'm validating just with the seed and the code that was given to me. Saying this, both email and application methods are configured. And now I can show you how that is handled on the login. So on the login page, when you create an empty app, so this is reactive, when you create a new app, the normal flow that you have is this one. This one is something new that I add, but normally is executing. Then you have a call here into the do login action. And if everything goes well, remove feedback message and redirect to the application. But since we have the MFA, I had to redo this. And what I did was this. So the first thing, I still do the do login, okay? Because I need to understand that the user and password that are being given to me are correct. And this is an actual user of my system. After I do the login and I know that is a valid user, I check if that user has any multi-factor authentication method configured. And if it's not empty, it means that he has some multi-factor authentication configured. So I just do a logout of that user. I don't want that user to access my system yet. And I say that MFA is needs to be done. Other thing that I do is I pass a GUID for this specific user. So here I have an extension, I have here a table linked to the users table. This is just a user extension that links a GUID to a user. And this is just another step of security, okay? So if I just pass the user ID, it's a lot easier to an attacker to get access to that user ID than is to a GUID, because as we all know, sometimes these user IDs show up on the URL and it's easier to spot it than a GUID. A GUID is really hard to get it and write it somewhere, because if the attacker is able to access this GUID or the user ID, he would be able to skip the step of user and password, okay? So he will only need to get access to your email or application, cell phone if you need it, without knowing the user and password. So, and that's why we use a GUID, because it is a lot harder for anyone to get access to it. We could even make this more complex and instead of having a GUID that is always attached to a user ID, we could create a new GUID every time that this happens, if we wanted to step up the security. So saying this, so MFA is, I save the GUID on a client variable, and I go into that screen where the user needs to select the MFA method. So on the screen, the user just selects which type of MFA method he wants to use. And if independently of which one he chooses, we show this pop-up. So we have one for email and the other for app, where the user needs to insert the code. If he inserts the code of the application, we go into this login app MFA. And basically what I do is almost the same thing I did on the other validation. But here I receive the user MFA that the user selects to be used, the code he gave me, and which user this person is. On this query, I will say, okay. Here I validate the code, and if the code is valid, I just do the login of that user. For the email, it's basically the same. We just use another action. Instead of validate TOTP, we validate an hash OTP, but this is exactly the same. So, and then we check the code that everything is correct. And if everything is correct, we log in that user into our application. And I think I showed you guys everything. So if anyone has any question, any doubts, or if they want to see a specific part of the code, just let me know.
Yeah, Marcelo, we have a question from the Q&A session. Between the login and the user MFA check aggregate and the logout when the MFA is active for the user, is it a security risk? Sorry. It's just a split second. However, the user is effectively logged in, for like that instant in between those two.
No, it is still not logged in. Okay, so the server is on the server, unless so it could happen if it did another request to another thing somehow in that specific second. but I think even the server don't answer all the requests that fast. So when the server try to get the second request, he would not be logged in, because the the client itself still doesn't know the user is logged in. So on the server side, the things aren't saved yet. So it's really fast. So to be honest, I normally don't do it like this with login, logout. Normally I check the password. So I do the validation of user and password by myself without doing the login. But when I was doing this, I was having some issues that the validation was never correctly done for some reason. But I think it's because they changed the generate password action. Before this worked, but now the generate action, even for the same user and password, the generate password is always different. So I think you would need to have more code to make the check yourself. But yes, doing the check yourself without logging in and logging out would be better. But for some reason, I wasn't able to do, because they changed something on that generate password action that doesn't generate always the same password for the same input.
Sounds like a bug.
It's not a bug, it's a security measure.
Oh, got you. Okay.
So it doesn't use only the input, it should use other stuff random on the background that I still don't know what it is, but maybe I will find it out.
Okay. Thanks, Pedro, for that question. David here has another question or comment. He's saying, I'm assuming that this kind of code can be used in a non-login situation. For example, a banking user using making a transaction of over $10,000, then an additional MFA check could be implemented to authorize that user, and they could use that token for the same sort of flow for that action.
Yeah, so multi-factor authentication is not used only for the login. So a lot of applications that I saw on the beginning only ask you the user and the password, but when you try to make an action that needs more, it has more restrictions and you need more permissions, it activates the MFA and asks you on that time. So it can be used in any place that we want, not just login.
Okay, cool. And then Cameron's asking if the code is available for review. You said you were working on getting this submitted for the Forge.
Yeah, it's not yet on the Forge, but yes, I will finalize anything that I need and I will put it on the Forge. You just need to look for my profile, and I would say that in the beginning of the next week, you will see there a new component with this name, how to build a secure MFA.
Okay, yeah, how to build a secure MFA. I'm sure it's gonna, rocket to the top of the download charts.
No, I hope so, because from what we saw from that Microsoft study, all the public-facing applications should have this. So if you don't have this right now on your clients, you should go into them and say, we need to implement this.
Yeah, it's passwords are basically just an inherent security risk, and
Correct.
it's not going away basically. So
the problem with passwords is not the password itself. So if all the passwords were 20 more characters and all different, the password was okay. The problem are the users. So users have basic passwords and use the same in all their applications, and that's the issue. It's not the password itself that is the problem.
Yeah,
the user is
like,
always the problem. Yeah.
It's people like my dad, basically. Okay, are there any more questions out there? Feel free to type them in, or unmute, ask them directly.
Is that Google Authenticator that you have out on the Forge? I see a name on it from 2020. Is that one still viable, or is it out of date?
Sorry, I wasn't able to understand the question.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Peter was asking if the Google Authenticator application that was published on the Forge a couple years ago, is that if you had worked on that, and if that was still viable.
No, it's still viable. To be honest, I'm also on that component, and we refactored it like 1 year or 2 years ago. So you can also use that component.
Yeah, that's what he was asking, if that was, your handiwork as well.
Yeah, it is. So you can use it if you want.
Okay, we have another question here asking how this MFA integration might work with single sign-on.
Yeah, so single sign-on is one of the factors for authentication. And you can add any other factors that you want. For example, if you use single sign-on authentication, for example, with Active Directory, Microsoft, you can even go into the authenticator application that Microsoft has, and you can say login from the application itself. You don't even need to put anything on your computer. So single sign-on also works with, it's just another factor of authentication, and Microsoft already provides ways of the application on your mobile to log in you directly to your computer if you want. But to be honest, I just know that it works like that. I never used it myself.
Yeah, I wonder how the, if you're using like social sign-in or something like that, you'd have to kind of read the login process almost the same way and still like half log them in until they approach the MFA or confirm the NFA.
Yeah, the social authentication, once again, is another factor of saying I'm this person. So all these are different ways of a person say I'm this user. We need to find a way of on our applications to have as many factors as we can without disrupting the user experience of the user.
Yeah, that's that's the challenge for the next 5 years, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, are there any other questions out there?
So if people don't have questions right now, but they remember in the future, you can ping me on the community. So you can send me a message there or contact me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have after this session.
Okay. Well, thanks, Marcel. That was a comprehensive demo. I really appreciate the thoroughness and the detail, and just how well you walked through the methods and the flows for your demo app here. I'm looking forward to seeing that on the Forge in the coming weeks.
Yeah. No, I hope that everyone liked the code, because normally when I come to these sessions and people only show boring slides, I almost fall asleep, and I prefer to look into the code. So I hope that people that are here are the same like me. Maybe there are some people there that fall asleep because of the code. So everyone is different.
Well, we were falling asleep because of the bagels, and it was just the carb load want to come in. But no, thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, so
Hey, Tim, am I audible? Hello?
does somebody have something else?
How many possible factors are possible? Or is this a limit?
I think someone was trying to speak.
Oh, okay.
Tim, is it audible now?
It is.
Okay. My question is there any suggestion to implement MFA for offline application?
For what?
An offline.
application. Offline application means with the local storage without internet connection.
Oh, an offline application. So it's really hard to make an offline application secure. So there's nothing you can do with for an offline application to work. Everything needs to be at the client side. So so how those applications work, they have a database on the client. If the database is on the device, any person can hack it through and get the data from there. Forget about having security in any application that only works offline. So you need to, on those kind of applications, you cannot expose any critical information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you could try to obscure it with an ID, and then you're good, and then connect that to a secret. But I mean, in the end, they're all joins.
Yes, you can make all the steps. So you can encrypt it, you can try to obscure the data. So, and that will make it harder for any attacker. So it's like this, it's the trade-off. How expensive it is to hack your application and how much value they will get by hacking your application. Security is always about that. There is no 100% system that is 100% secure. The thing is, it's more costly to access that system than the value that brings hacking it. So you can put all those layers of protection, encryption, try to only put information that is not relevant on the offline application. But in the end, you need to know that it's possible to go over all those layers. All depends on the information that is on the other side of all those protection layers.
Got it. Thank you.
You are muted, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Okay, I'm going to take the share back over, and we're going to have a pop-up quiz for some OutSystems stuff. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Kahoot, but it is a fun like interactive quiz application. And if you go to kahoot.it on your phone or on your laptop and use this 268 wow, I can't, my dyslexia is coming out here, 281-6218, you'll join this this page, and then we'll test some of your knowledge here. 281-6218. And this does have music. So if you, I don't know if you guys can. I don't know if you guys can hear that over the. You know, I was thinking about that as we were getting started, and we should get the that next step OSDC soundtrack. The beginning, the intro of those were pretty good. I don't know if that's available, but
Katerina was there. We need to ask her.
Yeah.
Where she is. Now she left.
I'll follow up with her. All right, we've got what looks like about 10 people here. 10 and a half of them, or 16, sorry. And let me just double check if everyone's ready. Make sure. Yeah, let me put this. And then I'll put the code in here. All right, there we go. A couple more coming in. Man, this might set my record for biggest Kahoot participation, you know? It's usually just me and David facing off. Alrighty, we'll start in 5, 4, 3, 2, and here we go. So you get 4 options on your screen, and we're just going to test some of your knowledge coming in. So question 1, what does MFA stand for? Select the best answer. Is it red, multifunctional area, Master of Fine Arts, mullets fiber arrangement, or multi-factor authentication? Typos actually count double, so and you do get answers for oops, sorry, picked the wrong one there. You get points for speed as well. So Pedro is quick off the draw. Question number 2, what percentage of employees use applications that are not authorized by enterprise? This was on the study slide. Is it A, 50%, B, 70%, C, 60%, or D, 40%? I'm not sure that Marcelo touched on this, but you know, if you read the slide closely, this was on there. Bit of an unfair question. We'll send out the numbers a little bit later, but looks like Sony picked up, took up first, and then Raj and Aki are separating themselves from the pack here. All right, this one. What percentage of passwords are reused? Is it A, 73, B, 50, C, 81, or D, 67? I think my dad's is about 95%, and it's all turkeys, lowercase. Oh, we've got some distribution in the curve here, but 73% was the answer there. And then Pedro takes the lead again. We're going to have a close race. It'll all come down to this last question. What percentage of attacks can be prevented with multi-factor authentication? Is it A, 99%, B, 9.9%, C, 99.9%, or D, 999%? We can prevent other people's attacks, with multi-factor authentication.
Multiple dimensions of
Yeah,
not just the third dimension.
So the answer was C. Almost 100% are preventable by multi-factor authentication. Sorry, 99 was not the fullest complete answer, but
Wow.
so here we go on the podium. It's Ignacio, as well as just M, the letter M.
Just the letter M.
And Pedro. Pedro takes it home. So you guys, I'm gonna just take a screenshot of that. So you guys, we can follow up with me, and you get some OutSystems swag that we'll mail out to you. Sweet guys, that was pretty fun. So let me come back to my presentation here, slideshow. So yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you, Marcella, for putting all your hard work into the that demo and the component, and tackling a really, really important use case, a very hot topic in the industry. There'll be a feedback survey going out following this up. If y'all can fill that out and give us some feedback as to what you enjoyed about the topic, whether we gave enough detail, not enough detail, at what point you fell asleep, and then what you would like to hear in the next coming up sessions. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks all for coming, and have a great day.
Good job.
Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.